Lucy in the Sky is directed by Noah Hawley, the creator of shows like Legion and Fargo, two really great shows if you've not seen them, and stars Natalie Portman, John Hamm, Dan Stevens, and Zazie Beetz. And this film is about a woman named Lucy Cola, played by Natalie Portman, who has just landed from her mission in space and feels a bit disoriented with the world after she's come back. And then after that, she starts to find herself more and more disconnected with reality, even down to the point that she's making a lot of irrational decisions. She starts having an affair with another co-worker named Mark, played by John Hamm, and Dan Stevens, her husband, is completely oblivious to this at this point. This is loosely based on an actual case that happened about 12 years ago, where an astronaut named Lisa Nowak tried to do this exact same thing. There was an attempted kidnapping and even battery charge that was put against her, and a possible attempted murder charge. And that case was quite transformative for a lot of people, especially NASA, which really updated a lot of things. They started to do a lot more strengthened background checks, mental checks, a lot more psychological evaluations. Psychiatrists actually took a look at her and found out she had symptoms of Asperger's, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression at the time that the incident took place. Now, all of those things, if you put it together, there is a movie in here. There is a fascinating story to tell in that regard, because we can see what caused the downward spiral. And there can be a pretty great approach to it in terms of how mental health is done. And this film has potential to do that. It has the potential to explore all those things. And Noah Hawley has worked on Legion, which is like the most cerebral thing in a long time. So yeah, there's enough going into this to try and make something which is very thought-provoking, that also understands the character it's dealing with, even though it's loosely based on that, but there's a lot of similarities at points. So there's potential. Unfortunately, this movie sucks. It's really bad. This kind of reminded me of The Girl on the Train that came out a few years ago. Emily Blunt in that film had a very similar standing. She was basically heading this entire film, and she was carrying the entire thing on her shoulders. And in that film, she gave a performance that honestly could have been considered for an Academy Award. It actually got a BAFTA nomination and was actually in the talks for a Best Actress nomination as well. The same thing might happen this year, because Natalie Portman is giving an award-worthy performance here. She is doing so much to make this material work. Unfortunately, nothing else in the movie around her, and I mean nothing, is working. The direction, the writing, which is laughably bad and kind of insulting actually, especially if someone is dealing with mental health and watching this film, mental health issues. And it's just poorly edited, it's convoluted as hell, and it's bizarre the way they've chosen to tell this story, which it doesn't make much sense. There's also not a lot of development at points for a lot of the characters and the decisions that they make. There's no proper sort of lead in as to why Lucy's making these decisions and what she's up to, because the film really doesn't cue you in on them. It's very scatterbrained in telling that story. In fact, it is so scatterbrained at times that certain character relationships are not properly established. I had to look this up. There's a girl in the film who I always thought was the daughter, but it turns out she's actually Lucy's niece, and her mom and dad are gone. They're out of the picture, and so Lucy's taking care of her. I didn't get that while watching the film. I actually did not pick up on that. I'm pretty sure that part was never mentioned. Or was it? I don't know, because at points the film was losing me so much that I had a hard time figuring out what the story it was trying to tell was. Which was another issue with the film, because I had no idea what story it was trying to tell for a long time. The first half of this film is plotless. They're trying to show you that she's not in tune with everything, and that's fine. And you have a psychoanalysis session with Nick Offerman making the most random cameo as someone who is trying to figure out, if her mental state is just okay. And he shows up then only at the very end of the film. I feel like his character should have been there a lot more, because he could have added in something to it. Like you said, the movie has said it's loosely based on that. So if you're gonna make it loosely based, you can do other things here. You can make your own story out of it. You can combine some elements if you want to from real life things that have happened. There's no such axe over your head. You can do it if you want to. But the film decides to not do that. It decides to play things a very different way. One of the biggest issues, though, I want to talk about, which is really, really bizarre, is the aspect ratio. Now, this movie has not done well at all. It's bombed pretty badly. I think as of right now, it has made $61,000 at the worldwide box office, which is a massive bomb, by the way. But in this film, the aspect ratio keeps changing from widescreen to super wide, like 4:1, to 2.39:1, to 4:3, to 1.78 inside black bars. It keeps on changing. At one point in time, there's a scene where Lucy's inside the house and the aspect ratio keeps floating around like it's water or something. And I honestly did not understand why they were doing that. It made it so weird because you suddenly felt like you were watching that DVD sign in a screensaver going from one corner of the screen to another and trying to hit the corner. That's kind of what it felt like at one point. You were just following the camera like, are you serious? Are we really doing this? I actually started live commentary with a friend of mine on the phone during the film because I was getting so blown away by just how much this film seems so confused at telling things. He actually had seen the film a day before I had, so I knew I could ask him about a few things. When I told him about the aspect ratios thing, his first response was, I'm surprised it took you 20 minutes to send me this text. I was expecting it 15 minutes ago. So, yeah. There was also a guy snoring at our screening because this film is boring as sin. There's also that. Yeah. But perhaps the biggest issue with this film, aside from the filmmaking on display, which is all of it is just really bad, is the way it's targeting the mental health aspect of it. It's terrible. There is a very complicated and very messy thing going on. She needs help. She needs someone to talk to her. And the film explores what's going on in her head horribly. Really, really badly, to the point that it becomes laughable. In the real event that happened, there are sources that have said that she was living it out as if it was a space mission in her head, like it was a rescue mission of sorts. And the film has that kind of thing too. She starts to have this approach in her head that she's that she's on a rescue mission of sorts. The film approaches that laughably, however, and it comes off as one of the most bizarre decisions made in a major film like this in a very long time. I don't understand the logic behind it. I don't understand why they decided to do it this way. What was the point of it? It didn't add anything to the story. In fact, there was no story to add it to. And it made it very discombobulated. She goes from someone who is having some issues within herself to someone who just goes snap within the matter of seconds. And her entire demeanor changes, and even though her performance is fantastic, for the character, we haven't had enough build up to that, and we haven't had enough time to get to know her properly so that we can understand why she's doing this. So it feels frustrating, and eventually it makes you lose attention of the fact that the film is going on in front of you, and you should be giving more of a shit than you really are. I think the final thing I just feel is honestly disappointment, because this is a guy who has made a lot of stuff, Legion, dealing with cerebral things. And the film is literally dealing with something cerebral here. And it decides to not go too much of a distance with it. It's just disappointing. It's just really disappointing. And like I said, I thought this movie was fairly awful. I'm gonna give Lucy in the Sky a 4.5 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I don't know how many people are actually gonna watch this review or see this movie. I don't know, but if you do, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, if you guys like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.